Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Inside the Vinyl. I'm your host, Tim Bianconi. If you would, go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel below. That would be greatly appreciated. So I'm going to dip back into my Lost Classic series and discuss a band that we've talked about before on this show, and that would be the mighty Black Sabbath. But this time, I'm going to talk about an album that is very polarizing amongst Black Sabbath fans, and that would be 1983's Born Again. So, just to give you a little context here, I have been searching high and low for several months for this album. Now, when I was a kid and collecting vinyl, these were a dime a dozen. You could find stacks of these at any used record store. These days, it's not as easy. I searched for a while, never found anything, and when it finally came up at one of my stores, it was a little bit higher price than I wanted to pay, but since I had been waiting so long, I went ahead and picked it up anyway. So again, Black Sabbath, Born Again. Released August the 7th, 1983. It is the 11th Black Sabbath studio record, and it is the first and only album with Ian Gillan on vocals. So, in 1982, Black Sabbath put out Live Evil, which was the last release with Ronnie James Dio and Vinny Appice in the band before they left to form Dio. So they brought in Ian Gillan, but at the same time, Bill Ward came back to play drums, and you still had Geezer Butler and Tony Iommi. So you still had 3/4 of the original Black Sabbath lineup, but now with somebody, with a very well-known singer in the fold as well. So the album, depending on what country you're in, was moderately successful. In the UK, it reached number 4. In America, it only got to number 39. And this was the first album in the original run of Black Sabbath albums to not be certified gold, platinum, or anything else, at least not in America. So let's take a look and see what's inside the vinyl. So once again, here we are. Here is the front cover, which may be the worst cover in album history, music history. We'll come back to that. And then on the back, you can see we've got the track listings on both sides. We've also got pictures of the band, and then of course below some credits given to production, as well as to the gentleman who played keyboards on this and several other Black Sabbath records, and that would be Mr. Jeff Nichols. So again, front cover, back cover. Now let's see what's inside. All right, so let's pull out the sleeve. On one side, written in very, I'm not sure what kind of font that is, but it looks a little gothy, a little bit evil. But again, just more liner notes, management, engineers, producers, so on and so forth, special thanks. It also says mastered on Amper, I think that's Amper tapes. And as we'll discuss later, with the sound of this record, they should probably never use those tapes again. So that's one side of the inner sleeve. The other side has the lyrics. And one thing I will say, there's 9 tracks on this album, but only 7 real songs. There are 2 little instrumental interludes, but only 7 real songs that actually feature everybody in the band. So that's a lot of lyrics for 7 songs, just my opinion. Okay, and if we pull out the album, again, nothing too special here. Pretty standard Warner Brothers fare. The standard black vinyl with the Warner Brothers sticker in the middle that you would see on any Black Sabbath or Van Halen or any other band that was on Warner Brothers in the 80s. That's what you would see in the middle of the record. So there you go. All right, so let's put all this back in here, and let's talk about this record a little bit. So like I said, this is a very polarizing record. Fans either love this album or hate this album. And like I said, it starts with the album cover. This might be one of the worst album covers in music history. The picture on the front was actually from a photocopy used in a 1968 magazine. I think that original picture was black and white. Obviously, it's colored here. And then this same photo was used later by Depeche Mode for something they did. You'd have to look that up on Wikipedia. I'm not really sure, what that was for. But the album itself, it received mixed reviews. Again, much like the fans, some critics loved it, some critics hated it, and I think a lot of it had to do with people feeling like Ian Gillan really didn't fit into Black Sabbath. With Ozzy and Dio, the lyrics were very, at times very evil, very dark. Whether it was about the occult or whether it was more medieval, like in the Dio era. Ian Gillan comes from, Deep Purple and his own band Gillan. He has a very, tongue-in-cheek, almost like British humor way of delivering his vocals and his lyrics, which doesn't necessarily fit the Black Sabbath mold. So So with that being said, let's talk about some of the tracks on here. So the first side of the album starts with a song called Trash. And I will say, I think side one, this album has Ian Gillan written all over it. But I would say side one is definitely the more Black Sabbath of the two sides of the album. So it starts with Trashed, which apparently had something to do with racing cars around the studio or the castle or the house or wherever it was they recorded the record. But again, nice start to the record, pretty hard rocking album, pretty hard rocking song. Then it goes into Stonehenge, which is playing in the background. I'm not sure if anybody can hear that. It's just a real quick, 1.5, 2 minute long instrumental, which takes us into Disturbing the Priest, which in my opinion is probably the most Sabbath-like song on the album. Very dark, very brooding. Ian Gillan kind of screaming all over it, but not. It's similar to what he does in Deep Purple, but in the context of this song, it fits and really just adds a very evil and dark, kind of atmosphere to the song. So again, that's the most Sabbath-like to me. Then it goes into a track called The Dark, which is another instrumental, and then into Zero the Hero, almost doom metal in a way. So much so that actually Cannibal Corpse covered this later on in their Hammer Smashed Face release. There is a cover of Zero the Hero that pretty much follows the same pace as this song, kind of slow and brooding, but again, the Cannibal Corpse version has their kind of Cookie Monster vocals on it, so it's a little bit different than what Ian Gillan does on here. But again, good start to side one. Trash, again, is really upbeat, and the other two songs are a little bit slower. Then we get to side two. I personally prefer side two to side one of this album, and I will say side two is really where Ian Gillan shines and really turns this more into Ian Gillan with Black Sabbath as a backing band, more so than a full-on Black Sabbath album. So you start right off with Digital Bitch, a really cool song. It's got a really cool chorus and actually draws comparisons in the way the pacing and the cadence and everything and of the vocals and all that, very similar to Highway Star. That's the song I was trying to think of. Very comparable to Highway Star. Then we go into what I guess you could consider the ballad of the record. It's the title track. It's called Born Again. And it's very slow. It actually starts out with some really, really eerie sounding guitar. And, not just because the production on this album is kind of muddy and weird, but, it'd be eerie sounding under any sort of mix or anything like that. Just very almost dark and evil sounding. But I would say vocally, and the song itself, the basic song structure, is very reminiscent to a Deep Purple song called When a Blind Man Cries, which is a B-side from the Machine Head album that actually is, I think, on some of the more current releases and reissues of it. But, if you've heard that song before, Born Again is very reminiscent of When a Blind Man Cries. And again, that's just my opinion. Hotline is the next song. Pretty upbeat, good song. There's a lot of live versions of that available on YouTube, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But Hotline, to me, I couldn't really pinpoint a certain song that it sounded like, but to me, it's very reminiscent of when he went back to Deep Purple the next year. And, fast forward several years after that. To me, Hotline sounds very much like a lot of what you would hear, maybe on a more current Deep Purple record. So again, another song on this side B that's just very, very Ian Gillan, very Deep Purple-ish, but with obviously Black Sabbath as the band. And then it ends with Keep It Warm, which to me, again, drawing comparisons to another Deep Purple song. There's a tune called Place in Line from the Who Do They Think They Are record from Deep Purple from 1973. And to me, Keep It Warm is very akin to Place in Line. That's just my opinion. Maybe somebody else hears something different. But when I heard the song, that was the first thing I thought. It's this sounds a lot like Place in Line. So, that pretty much covers, the songs on the record. Now, again, one of the biggest criticisms of this album is the mix. It's very muddy. It's very muffled. I'm not really sure. It sounds like it maybe recorded in a vacuum or mixed in a vacuum or something like that. It's just very weird. It doesn't have that clean, crisp sound, that you heard on Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules and, so on and so forth. Now, from what I understand, people have called for years for a remix of this album, and they couldn't do it because they couldn't find the original tapes. From what I've seen over the last couple of months, the Tony Iommi has actually found the tapes, got them all together for this album. So hopefully there is a remix and a deluxe reissue or something like that coming in the future. where this will be mixed properly and we'll be able to hear the full power of this album, and maybe at that point it will be less polarizing. So they released the album in '83. It's moderately successful. They went on tour, and the tour was kind of marred with criticism. First, Ward left either before the tour or right at the beginning of the tour, as some of his demons that he had been fighting crept back in. So they brought in Bev Bevan to play the drums on the tour. And apparently they had a Stonehenge monument that was too big for a lot of arenas. It was too big for a lot of the stages they played on. And it was actually mocked in the This Is Spinal Tap movie, if you remember the tiny little Stonehenge thing that came down. It was kind of, just mocking what Black Sabbath had done on the 1983 Born Again tour. So again, Ward left, was replaced by Bev Bevan. They did one tour, and then one album, one tour, and that was it. Ian Gillan went ahead and left and went back to the reformed Deep Purple. The next year, of course, they would release Perfect Strangers and go on a massively successful world tour. And other than a couple of years, that's pretty much where Ian Gillan's been ever since. Ward would not return to the fold until the 1996 reunion with Ozzy, and wouldn't appear on any sort of album until the reunion live record that I think came out in '98, if I'm not mistaken. Geezer Butler was out after this album too, and would not return until 1992's Dehumanizer, when they got back with Dio. So after this, it was just Tony Iommi for several years, and after this, Black Sabbath pretty much became a revolving door of various musicians, some well-known, some not well-known, and the lineups that weren't stable at all for the most part, until, of course, they reunited with Dio, and then, of course, reunited again later on with Ozzy. And again, to this day, really still, whether it's in Heaven and Hell, Black Sabbath, Dio, Ozzy, Tony Martin, whoever, the lineups really still have, over all these years until they stopped in 2013 or 16 or whatever it was, we're never really stable again. Again, I wouldn't go so far, my usual words for every album I do on here is like, oh, it's amazing. I wouldn't go so much to say, this album is amazing. Now, again, once it's remixed and re-released, I could have a totally different opinion, as will lots of other people. But there are a lot of people that love this record. I do like this record. I love side 2. Side 1 is okay to me. Side 2 to me is where it's at, And again, that's the more Ian Gillan influenced stuff, and it may not fit Black Sabbath, but if you listen with your ears instead of your, instead of your eyes, you might actually hear something on this album that you like. So, Black Sabbath, Born Again. Check it out. It's available. Hopefully you can find it in a record store. If not, it's on iTunes and Spotify, Pandora, CDs, whatever. There are deluxe editions that have a second CD with a live performance, I think from the Reading Festival in 1983, if I'm not mistaken. And it's kind of neat because you hear some stuff from Born Again, you hear some old Sabbath tunes, and then you even hear Black Sabbath doing a version of Smoke on the Water, which sounds pretty badass when Tony Iommi plays it. So check that out. That's all I've got for you this time. Like I said, go ahead, like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel below. I've got some other things out there. I've got my Inside the Vinyl series, which includes Lost Classics as well as live albums. I do have my Unboxing the Vinyl series, where we unbox reissues and box sets and new releases. Every so often, we do unbox something, that's in CD format. So Ian Trollington, you can kiss my ass. It just happens that way sometimes. But again, that's my Unboxing the Vinyl series. I've also got some live footage out there from some festivals, Exit 111, Welcome to Rockville, some footage from a KISS show. Hopefully now that, we're getting back to live shows, maybe there'll be some more of that in the future. I've also got some crappy disc golf videos if you're into crappy disc golf, featuring crappy disc golf players, myself included. So again, like, share, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.